Let's look at this one as a warm-up. So this one has 3,261. So this is a very high level puzzle. And let's see. So white to move. Let's take some time and figure out the solution. We have Jane join in. Hello, Jane.
Hello.
We just started, and we started with this puzzle, white to move. A very interesting one. White only have a king and 2 pawns. And we have Jack. Hello, Jack. Hello, hello. And we just started with this puzzle. And white to move. So black just moved the king to h8 after the check. It's quite interesting that black didn't take the g6 pawn. Weird. But anyway, so what should be our first move? I think that the tricky part for this puzzle is we need to figure out what is a plan from our opponent. Vicky, your hand is up.
F7.
Yeah, take the rook. And yes, I also got the message. Only king g4 or take the rook. Yes, exactly. We have two choices. I think take the rook is quite straightforward. So yeah, why not? And black push the pawn. What's the next move? Vicky, go ahead.
F8.
We have a queen. King to h7. What's next? I think here we have the most tricky part. Um, so first of all, when we look at the board, it's not possible to check the king because this diagonal is controlled by the bishop. So which means we have to stop the pawn. But the question is, where should we place the queen? Jaden, you're muted, Jaden.
I would place it on E7 because if he places it on E8, there might be like a risky like queen to bishop to G6.
So bishop. Sorry. So if we move queen to e8,
Can you play bishop there?
yeah, we can control the g6 square. Queen e7 or queen e8.
I've got no clue.
Mm. And also we have some other ways to stop the pawn. For example, queen to f2, right? This also work as it seems. Is there any difference among the three options? Is there any other way we can stop the pawn? So it's good that we list all the possible solutions and figure out which one is the best, or regardless which move, we can stop the pawn. So this is the, as I said, so the essence of this puzzle is we need to figure out what is the plan for our opponent. So if we move queen to f2, for example, what could be the move? Is there any counter attack from black? Or if we move queen to the e file, e7 or e8, is there any counter attack? Oh yes, Queen B4. You're right, Jack. I missed this one. Very good input. Queen B4. We can also stop the pawn. And also we can attack the bishop. Maybe that's a bonus. Hmm. So we have one more choice. Jin,
Is bishop to g6 an option?
you mean black checking our king with bishop g6?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's say we move the queen to e7, if bishop to g6. We have moved the king to g4. And is there any follow-up threat? Jaden, do you want to say something? Hand is up.
Did they like play H5 check?
What do you mean?
So like after bishop G6.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what, could they like play H5 check?
You mean after bishop g6, king g4, and h5?
Yeah, could they do that?
Yeah, it's another check. It's a follow-up check. But is that a problem to us? Maybe we don't need to worry about this h5 because we can, I mean, move the king to f3 or g3. So our king can escape basically. Hmm. We have four squares to stop the pawn, but there's only one move that is the best move. Queen b4. Why is queen b4 the best move?
Well, I only think it attacks the bishop.
Yeah, we can attack the bishop.
And it does avoid some sort of tricks of forks
Mm-hmm.
as it starts.
Yeah, it looks like our queen can do an extra thing to attack the bishop. What do the rest of you think? Shall we try queen b4? Let's see. Let's see how it goes. Ooh, it's not correct. It's not the best move, even though it seems as a perfect move. I feel like, yeah, it looks good. So the question is, let's move the queen to b4. Let's take the, oh, can I do that? No. Interesting. Okay, so the question is, so maybe we can think from another perspective. Let's think from black's perspective. If white play queen b4, let's take this one as a puzzle. Black to move. What is the best move for black? Then maybe you can figure out what is the best move for the previous position. So black to move. What is the best move for black? We talked about bishop to g6, right? But it turned out the king can escape from g4 to f3. So is there any way the black bishop can control the square where the king can escape? Like building a net to limit the white king. Set up a net. Jaden, your hand
Bishop, bishop F7, bishop F5.
up f5. Vicky, you also raise your hand. Do you agree or do you want to add something else? Okay. Bishop f5. So what are we doing here? What are we going to do after bishop f5? Jaden, do you want to share your idea?
Well, we're probably going to play G6 next turn.
Yes, g6.
But I've got another input. If that's the case, then I think we should have played queen to e8.
Mm. So, but let's talk about this first. If bishop to f5 and g6, the thing is the white king cannot escape. And I think the only move white can stop g6 is moving the queen back to the seventh rank, either e7 or b7, so the queen can ping the g7 pawn. But I mean, the queen cannot like stop the e pawn, so the queen is overloading. Okay, so we know if queen to b4, the bishop can go to f5, and that's a very beautiful way to checkmate the white king. So what is the best move for the king for the queen? So we know queen b4 is not a choice. So is there any move? Vicky, your hand is up.
Two, F2.
Yes, queen to f2, and this is the only square the queen can stop the pawn and also controlling f5. And bishop cannot move to f5. So I think this is a very good learning from this puzzle because in this puzzle it looks so easy for white to win, but actually it's not. It's not as easy as we expect. So if we have enough time on our clock when we play a tournament, so it's worth like spending because you're very close to win, right? You're very close to win. So it's worth spending a little bit more time if you have enough time to think about is there any counterattack from opponent. So yeah, queen to f2. That's the best move. And bishop to d3. So if bishop wants to protect the pawn, what can we do? I think that should be the last move of this puzzle. Jaden?
Or you should get your king into the game, I think. Or maybe you could play queen e1, probably maybe.
So if queen e1, we place the queen to e1, we kind of stop the pawn, but the bishop can go back to f5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
So we probably had to go king g4.
yeah, I think so. I think it's good that we can make the king safe first, and then let's solve the problem of e2 later. So yeah, king to g4, make the king safe, and then I'm pretty sure we can like win in the pawn or like win bishop with the queen. Cool. So that's a warm up. We have two more puzzles, but let's save it for later. Cool. So the agenda for today. So the first of all is let's walk through and I mean um like review or introduce an opening that is Scotch game. I review some games that some of you played in some tournament, and I think that's a very good opening. You can like prepare as your one of your weapons in opening. I think most of you play like bishop to c4 like Italian, and some of you play bishop to b5 sometimes in this setup. But let's deep dive at the beginning of this Scotch game, as this is super useful like um, opening. I can play it, but I will avoid too. What do you mean? You can play it, Jaden?
I always fall for the traps. Yeah, I always fall for the traps and lose quite quickly against it.
When you play white or black?
I'll play in black. I really don't like it.
Uh-huh. Okay. So here I play as white, and I think Scotch game is also a very good opening if you want to try. And the reason I want to recommend this one is because when you play some rapid games where you have like 10 or 15 minutes on your clock, so if you play opening that is very aggressive at the beginning, so if your opponent isn't not familiar as you of this opening, it will bring you a lot of advantage. So the unique side of Scotch game is at the third move, white try to attack the center with the pawn. So this is very intense. And so the black has to know how to deal with this move. Otherwise, black the structure will be like destroyed. So d4. So from white's perspective, so we need to know. So for example, black have so many ways to deal with this opening. We saw like d6. This is a little passive to support the e5 pawn. And I can tell you that the best move for white is to push the pawn d5. So you can have a very strong and a very good like space advantage at the center. And the knight doesn't have a good place to go. Like knight d4, you will lose the pawn. Knight b4, you'll be kicked to the corner. And knight a5, that's a blunder. You will lose the knight. Knight will be trapped. And knight go to e7. The knight will block the bishop, and the position of the knight is really, really bad. I mean, maybe the best move for black is move the knight back to b8, and you see like black like wasted two moves in opening. So d6 is not the best move, but still some players might play d6, and you know how to deal with that. So take the pawn is the most common move, and there are some like you can play bishop to c4, that's Scotch gambit, but what I recommend is knight taking the pawn, and this is the most common move. So yeah, just take it, and you have a knight at center. So the downside with playing Scotch is there will be like so many exchanges at the early stage, so which would like simplify the game. So if you play white, usually you are slightly stronger at the beginning, so it's not good to trade so many pieces, because if you have as many pieces as possible, it's good that you can utilize like your strengths in opening when you play white. But here you can see like you trade the pawns, and there is another trade at the center. The knight could be traded. But the best move for white, for black, one is bishop to c5 or knight f6. We will talk about knight f6 like in some later lessons. We will talk about bishop to c5 in this one. And I do see a game that some have played in some like tournament. But before bishop to c5, I think knight d4 is not accurate, but some players might choose this one. And then the reason why knight d4 is not a good move, thinking about some earlier lessons, we talked about piece exchange. So this exchange improved the position of the white queen. So if black doesn't take the knight, the white queen cannot move to the center, but after the trade, the queen can move to the center. And this is a very good square for the queen. So for example, if you move knight to f6, that's a mistake. And after e5, the knight doesn't have good place to go. So these three squares are all controlled by this powerful queen. And if your knight moves to h5, it's so bad, and it will be trapped with g4. So you take the knight and queen to f6, offering a trade with the queen because the white queen is so strong, so you can offer a queen trade. And again, taking the queen, exchanging the queen like immediately is not the best move, because it only improves the position of the g8 knight. So you can choose play queen to c3, like move a little bit like backward, but first of all make the queen protected, and if your opponent take your queen, it takes over the knight. You can develop a knight after this exchange. And if black doesn't take your queen, you can take the c7 pawn, for example. But I would like to talk about more of this, like bishop to c5. So black developed this bishop, and you can play bishop to e3, and you have a hidden trick after this move that is knight to c6. So that is a trap if black doesn't realize after knight f6, take the knight, you attacking the queen, and basically you can win the bishop. So the best move for black is queen to f6. Develop queen, and if you take this knight, and black can take this one, or black can even take your bishop first, because knight c6 doesn't attack the queen. So after queen f6, there are three pieces attack the center, and you can play c3 to support the knight. If black take the knight, you will have a very strong like connect the center pawn. That's very good. And since black queen is at like f6, so black could move the knight to e7 to connect the knight and also develop the g8 knight. Bishop c4, controlling this diagonal. So you can see white has a very good control of the center. So that's also a reason I recommend this opening. So all of you can try that. So 95. So I remember when I first introduced this opening, I said the most common move is castling. This is straightforward, and I will explain why I don't think 95 is a good choice. But after castling, you can also castle, make the king safe, and black could play d6, and later black can develop this light square bishop, maybe to e6, maybe to d7, and so yeah. Um, or the bishop b6. This is also good to keep the bishop safe. I mean d6 or bishop to b6. So yeah, and you can keep developing pieces like knight a3 is fine. Don't worry about like knight being traded because this bishop, so because you can have like pair bishop or knight b5 after the trade. You can play knight b5, attack c7. So this is how you can develop the knight to the um, like I mean knight a3 is not the ultimate position. Later you can move the knight to c2. So or you can move pawn a4 first and knight a3 and knight c2. So you can have these two knights connected. And after knight c2 you can play b4 to attack the bishop. So you have a very good like space advantage at the queen side. Bishop b6, you can move knight a3 again, and knight to c2. So these two knights are connected. So you can have a very good way to develop all the minor pieces. But I would like to talk to more of knight e5 in this lesson because I think is that you Blake you play against someone in a tournament. I think that was a couple weeks ago, and your opponent played knight e5. Do you remember, Blake?
I think so.
Mhm. And so, and I would like to explain why knight e5 is not the best move. It looks very like active. A knight stay at the center and attacking the bishop. So where should we put the bishop? That is the first question. The question to you all. So our bishop is under attack. Where should we put the bishop? Jaden?
Flip back to b3.
Put it to b3. Any reason?
One because if you go forward, you like you don't get control of the diagonal,
I mean forward, you mean to d5.
and you just traded it off, of course.
Yeah, you betrayed it, and we really want to save this bishop. This is a very good piece. Bishop b3. Okay, you can stay at this diagonal. Okay. Another thought. Let's ask around. Blake, you said e2. Why do you think e2 is best position?
Two.
I forgot if this was the correct position, but I had another teacher that recommended bishop to e2.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a reason behind this move?
I think it was after queen g6. Maybe that was bishop f3.
Okay, so at some point you can move the bishop to f3. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe yeah, you can protect the g2 pawn at some point. Okay. Jack, what do you think? Where would you move the bishop?
I would probably move it to b3 because you can keep on this diagonal and you can't really go anywhere except for e2. But I think there's no point of going to e2 because the diagonal is no better and I think staying on the on your diagonal seems fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Very good point. Vicky, what do you think? Where would you play? Where would you place the bishop?
Bishop to B3.
Mm-hmm. Bishop to b3. Any reason? Uh, you're muted. Do you want to like
Yes,
say something about reason? Yeah.
I wanted to. I could move out my bishop to. Then if afterwards I pushed the e4 pawn, I could put my bishop on c2, or if I moved my queen, I could put my bishop on d1.
Mm-hmm. So you can move the bishop maybe to c2, like aiming at this diagonal. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a very interesting idea to place the bishop at c2. Cool. Jin, what do you think? Where would you move the bishop?
Uh, 3. I would move it on B3.
Mm-hmm. Any reason?
Maybe because if you go back to E2, you're active.
Mm-hmm. So b3 is more active than being an e2. Cool. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Cool. Thank you. It sounds to me it's a question of being like active or like defensive. So I think is that the Blake bring up a very good, interesting idea. So we talked about queen to g6, right? So for example, if we move the bishop to b3, I like being like active. It feels so straightforward to move the bishop to b3. But how can we defend this move? Queen to g6. So we need to think from our opponent's perspective. Maybe our opponent has a plan to attack our weakness, which are these two pawns in this position. So this is a double attack. And how can we deal with this forking? Is that a problem? So unfortunately, we cannot move the queen to f3 to protect the pawn. And also, if we castle, we'll lose e4. That is a central pawn. This is a really good, like, really good pawn. It's a pressure, so we don't want to lose the e4 pawn. We don't want to lose the g2 neither. If we play f4, I think the queen will take g2 and attacking our rook probably. But if we move the bishop to e2, can we solve this problem? Queen to g6. And Blake, is that something what you said? How can, after queen to g6, can white defend these two pawns?
Bishop F3.
Okay, bishop f3. So we can trade. Oh, I mean, we can protect the pawns. And if black trade the knight with the bishop, we can take that with the queen probably. Mm-hmm. Okay. So at least we can make the pawn safe. Yes. So yeah. So so I mean bishop b3 looks like more like aggressive and make the bishop like staying active. But if you look at the plan, queen to g6, it turned out that bishop e2 is can save our pawns basically. And also another reason we move bishop to e2 is we can defend the g4 square. Because, for example, if black played d6, when the bishop controlling g4, the knight can move to g4 and trade with our dark square bishop. And we also will have double pawns of this trade. But after bishop to e2, we can guard the g4 square. And the reason we want to guard the g4 square because we want to push the f pawn to kick the knight. The knight has to go back to where it comes from. So that's why I said knight e5 is not the good move, because after f4, the knight has to go back. So let's look at let's learn one game from the Grandmaster and how white win this game from this Scotch opening. So white played bishop to e2 and black played d6 and white castle first. After castle, f4. So this is very good. So this is a question about whether which side should we attack our opponent? Should we push the queen side pawn or should we push the king side pawn? And it looks to me like pushing the pawn at the king side or attacking the king side make more sense because we have pawn majority at the king side. We have 4 pawns at the king side, but our opponent we only have 3 pawns. So when you have more pawns, so usually you can have more pieces to attack your opponent. So after f4, the knight go back. So this is what I said. Knight e5 is not a good move. So it kicked the bishop, but the knight has to go back after f4. So move the king to h1 because after pushing the f pawn, so this diagonal, if you look at this e3 bishop, is hanging, and your knight cannot really move because the bishop's hanging, and also you have a king behind this bishop. So to make this diagonal less dangerous, so move the king with h1 to the corner, and bishop to dp6, you move the knight to a3. So why don't we move the knight d2? Maybe you have this question earlier. Why don't we move the knight to d2? Why do we move the knight to a3 instead of d2? Jane.
It blocks the queen, so now actually it blocks the queen, which is one of the defenders of the d4 knight. But I don't think black would take it because once you take it, the pawn will take, and then the pawn only worth 1 point, and they'll probably use a knight or bishop, which will cost 3 points.
I think you're right that the d2 knight blocked the queen defending d4. But can we take that? So we have 3 attackers. White have 2 defenders. So if we take the knight, if white takes that with the pawn, can we win the pawn with bishop to d4? Maybe we can. Yeah, I think it should be safe. e5, that's not a problem. We can take that. The bishop is still safe. If we take that, we can take the pawn. If, for example, knight f3, that's not a problem. I can take the e3 bishop. So black won 2 pawns. So yeah, so the 92, the problem is why do I lose a pawn? We'll lose a center pawn. So that's why move knight to a3, and later the knight can move to c2 or even to b5. This is also good. If we don't have this dark bishop, knight b5, you can attack the c7 pawn because the black king moved out so early. The c7 pawn could be a mistake. It could be a target. So knight to g6, so you can feel the strength of your center pawns. The e7 knight doesn't have a good place to go. It moved to g6 and queen to d2, kind of support f4, and also you can move the a1 rook to either e5 or d5 as soon as possible. And h6 and knight c4. So in this game, white didn't move knight to c2. If you move knight to c2, as I said, you can connect knight, you can strengthen your center. But knight c4, the intention is very clear. White is trying to exchange the knight with the bishop. And also, as I said, after the exchange, the c7 pawn become a target. So white is definitely going to move the knight to b5. And also because the a pawn moved to b6, so if you move knight to b5, it's just like the b5 square is just outpost for the knight. So there's no pawn can kick the knight. Of course, the c pawn can push up, but the c pawn is blocked by the knight. So after a pawn to b6, the first of all, move the bishop to d3, protect the pawn, protect the center pawn, that's important. And b4, knight b5, attacking c7. And the e6 knight cannot protect the c7 pawn forever because after f5, the e6 knight have to go. So black move rook to e7 to protect the pawn. So now it's clear to see that white is better than black because white pieces are more like active, and white has a very good control of the center, and white has pair bishop. The next question is how can we maximize our strengths to convert this position or convert this strength to win it? The c4. Um, what is the purpose of this move? Does anyone have any idea? What is the purpose of c4? Does white want to push pawn c5? Or is that the next, or like, is this move like not necessary? So we need to read the mind from this grandmaster. So what is the purpose of c4? Does anyone, Jaden?
Controls d5 and protects b5.
Control d5 and protects b5. Yeah, that's exactly the intention. I would like. I believe, and why we want to control these two squares. So again, we need to think from our opponent's perspective. So if you switch the board, if you like flip the board, if you play as black, you find your position is so awkward. You cannot do anything basically. What can you do? Move the bishop to d7? No, because after f5, the knight move away, you will lose c7 because bishop d7 blocks your rook protecting his pawn. Do you want to move the queen? I don't think so. Queen to g6, there's a fork. Queen to h4, that that is not doing anything. Queen to h4 is not any like is not helpful. Moving this rook? No, I don't think there is any good square for the rook. So the only thing black can do, I think, that is rook to d7 and then d5. That is the only way black can try to kind of like challenge the center control of white pieces. I cannot say rook d7 d5 is a very good idea, but this is the only way black can offer a pawn exchange or black can expand its space. And how can we stop this plan? That is c4. So now we understand why white plays c4, because white wants to control the d5. And after c4, I think it's so desperate for black because there's no hope to to play any like attacking move. And the only thing black can do is wait for white like initialize any attack. Okay, so that's also the reason I recommend this opening because white can have a very strong center control. C4. Cool. So you see, like in this game, black play like a hopeless move into h8 and rook to e1. So what you can do is improve your position, improve your pieces position, and later when you have a chance, when all your pieces are ready, you can open files and diagonals, and then you can attack opponent. Rook to d7, and bishop to b1. Bishop b1 is a very interesting move. The bishop still stays at this diagonal, but at the same time, it opened up your queen. So your queen can like kind of control this d file. And also your queen can be placed in front of a bishop. And now you can see some plan like bishop to b1, maybe queen to c and e5. So there is a threat at queen h7. So you see, so Black is preparing everything before opening the files or diagonals. Knight f8, the knight is guarding h7, and a3 to protect the b4. Why are we doing this? It's very clear that white is going to move the queen because now the queen is protecting b4, but after a3, you don't have to move. You don't have to use the queen to protect the pawn, and it's very good that the pawn is protected by the knight. So everything is connected, and the white pieces are so harmonious with each other. Queen to e6, queen to c2, f6. Okay, what are we gonna do? So now I think the majority of white pieces are very well positioned. So now, what would you do? So if you play as white, what you gonna do? When your pieces are well positioned, when your pieces are so ready. If you play white, what could be your choice? Jane, what do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's worth like spending a bit of time to think about it. Um, so yeah, let's take some time. Let's take some time. So uh, I think there could be something we can do. Maybe we can keep improving the position. For example, moving the bishop to b2 at this diagonal, or maybe we can, I don't know, push the c pawn, or maybe we can push the f pawn. Maybe
I was thinking pushing the f4. That's my only move I can think of.
you mean push the pawn to f5
Yeah, f5, not f4.
to attack the queen.
Yeah,
Mhm. Okay,
but oh, whatever.
okay. Then what would you do next after pawn to f5? So for example, if f5, I think the queen has to run away. For example, the queen move to f7. And what can we do next?
I might try and find a way to attack the
Mm-hmm.
maybe with my bishop. So maybe I'd move my bishop to a2 and then discover attack by c5.
Bishop a2 is a really good move. So you will see the move in this game, and the bishop move to this diagonal to attack not the queen but the king at this diagonal. Bishop a2, that's a very good idea. And also after f5, you can see the light squares are really weak from black's perspective, so that you can do something at the light square with bishop a2. Cool. So we have one option. So is there any other thoughts from anyone else? Blake, what do you think? What is your move?
Yeah, I think f5.
Hmm. You also agree with f5? Do you also agree with, like, for example, bishop to a2,
Yeah.
attacking this diagonal? But what if the queen escape again? The queen like escape to e8. The queen is so awkward, but it's safe. How can we like? How can we set up a follow-up attack? So, I mean, black
Maybe
pieces.
queen to b3.
One more time.
Queen to b3.
B3. Ooh, you're going to like doing something like queen to g8. Mm-hmm. But what about knight to h7?
Maybe rook f3.
Rook f3. What is your plan? You are going to move the rook to g3, h3?
Yeah, I think g3.
Mm-hmm. Let's say you have a rook at g3. What you gonna do?
Rook to g6.
Mm-hmm. And what's the next move after rook g6? Maybe move the other rook.
Maybe bishop c5.
You mean pawn to c5?
Yeah.
Mm. But the light square is still guarded. I mean, black can take over pawn. After c,
Bishop takes h6.
bishop take. Okay, I see. Bishop take h6, and then you can have rook to g8. Okay, I see. Oh, then we have a plan. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Cool. So let's save this option for now, but is there any other option? So when you like trying to set up a plan to attack, it's usually good that you have more than one plan, more than one option, and then you decide which one is the best direction you want to go. Jada, you also said F5. Do you want to add something more on top of what we discussed?
Not really.
Hmm. Cool. The Jack, what do you think? Do you agree with F5 or do you have any other idea?
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm? Okay, cool. Vicky, what do you think?
The E3 bishop and then play queen to E5.
Okay, so you want to move the E3 bishop and then E5. Hmm. Then where would you move the bishop? Do you want to move the bishop, for example, to C1 or D4 or D2 before E5? You're muted, Vicky. It looks like you want to say something.
Bishop to E2.
Bishop to D2.
And then if I want to, I can play bishop to C3 afterwards too.
Yeah. So you can place your bishop at this diagonal. Okay, cool. So and you want to play E5. So any reason you want to play E5 instead of F5?
It opens up the queen and bishop. And if, say, take, I can take back my pawn and open up the rook.
Hmm. Okay. So let me like recap what you said. So after E5, first of all, we can open this diagonal. That is the reason we place the queen and the bishop at this diagonal, right? So and also whatever like f6 or d6 pawn taking over e pawn, we can open the f5, for example. Or if black doesn't take our pawn, we can take, I mean, maybe f pawn or d pawn, and then we can open the e pawn, the e file. So which means first of all we can make these two pieces, like we make this diagonal open for the queen and bishop, and also we can make our rook being active. So that's what the player like played. So the player played e5 immediately. The player didn't play bishop to the bishop to c1. We will talk about f5 later, but let's see what happened after e5. And so, and why didn't the white, move the bishop first and later e5? Why did white play e5 immediately? Because maybe it's not necessary to move the bishop. So after e5, and as I said, there is a threat on this diagonal, and also if you don't take my pawn, I will take yours. So black take that with the d pawn, and this makes sense because if you like take with the f pawn, so you like, this move like favors white because white has a rook at f file. So if you take that with the f pawn, this favors the white rook. So take that with the d pawn, at least you have a rook at a d file. And white take that with f pawn. And of course, you cannot take that with the f pawn because you will lose the knight. The knight is a hanging piece. And you can see like since like black pieces are really bad, especially this bishop and the rook, these two pieces are underdeveloped. So if your opponent have like more underdeveloped pieces than yours, it's good that you open files and diagonals because your active pieces can like can have stronger like power to be released. So of course it's not good to pick up with the queen because there is so many ways to discover attack. So here black take down with the knight. And let's see what is a follow-up move. Bishop to f4. I think the reason why didn't like white play the bishop to d2 and later to c3 because white wants to attack the knight immediately with the bishop. And this actually is so strong, this move, because as I said, the knight is hanging, and if I take your knight, I can like take your f8 knight. And the problem is the f8 knight cannot move because the knight has to guard h7, and the bishop is so awkward, which means the a8 rook cannot reach f8. So white can actually move the bishop to f4 instead of move it to d2 and c3. So d2 to c3 looks okay, but it's not as like effective as bishop f4. And black moved the king to g8 to protect the knight, but look at c5. What is the purpose of c5? Open the c file, Vicky. What do you think?
Bishop to a2.
Yes. So I think some of you mentioned that bishop a2. So you can attack the queen from this diagonal. So with that being said, if your pieces are more active than your opponent, it always, it usually favors you when you like open more files and diagonals. So queen to e7. The queen moves down, move to e7, and after the exchange, bishop to a2 and knight to e6. It feels strange because the knight moved e6 to like intentionally being pinned. I have a question. Why didn't black move the king to h8? Is there any problem with king to h8? So white actually has a tactical move. Let's take the one as a puzzle. What is the best move for white after king to h8? Vicky?
Rook take e5.
Take e5, exactly. So if you take my rook, I can take your f8. And that's a checkmate because h7 is controlled. So that's the reason black moved knight e6, and still can take the pawn and threat this knight and just add another attacker on this knight. The knight is pinned, so just trying to add as many attackers as possible on the knight, and finally you can win the knight. And black resigned after losing the knight. Okay, so this is one example game of this Scotch game. So you can try this out and let's see. Cool, let's take 10-minute break. Okay, I think we have to say so many things and you have also worked through so many things. So let's take 10-minute break and we will come back. Okay. Okay, let's come back. Mhm. Cool, cool, cool. Does anyone come back? Does everyone come back? Mm-hmm. Good. So yeah, so next topic I would like to walk through is still about positional analysis. So let's look at this position. I think in some previous lessons we talked about piece exchange, right? But in this one, let's talk about something else. So this is about how can we open files or how can we attack weakness of our opponent. So if you look at this position, we have equal number of pieces between both sides. We have castled, we have a bishop, our king is quite safe, and black has a castle, and black has a queen at the center, and black has a rook at the BA, and this bishop is underdeveloped. And if you look at the pawns, so I mean all the 7 pawns all stay at the 7th rank. But the question is, how can we set up a plan to attack our opponent? Because we have already made the king safe. The bishop, the minor piece, has been already been developed. And yeah, we have a semi-open file. What else? We have pawn and c4 controlling the center square. So how can we set up a plan? Or how can we find a weakness? How can we find weakness, basically? Jaden, what do you think? You're muted.
You could start off with rook to c1, rook to c3, then rook to e3.
Move the rook to like attack the queen.
Yeah.
Move the rook out. We have to move the rook. Cool. That's like plan A. Do we have plan B or plan C? Does anyone has any other idea? Jane, you're muted. You have
This one might be a bad idea because it opens up the king, but as there's no black dark squared bishop, I think f4 is not that bad.
F4. I like this idea. Kick the queen, kick the center queen. And yeah, even though this diagonal is open and as you said, black doesn't have dark square bishop, so we don't need to worry much. And even though yeah, I mean, queen c5, we might lose a pawn, but I don't think that's a problem because let's move the pieces. If you take my pawn, I can move the rook and take a c7. So I can take c7. So, and also after f4, e4, we have very strong connected pawn in the center. So yeah, f4 looks good. Cool, we have plan B. Do we have plan C or plan D? I would like to collect more, as many ideas as possible. Jack, what do you think? If you play as white, what could be your move?
Well, first of all, I guess you could just trade the queen off by doing something like queen e3 if you wanted to.
Trade the queen.
And then after you trade the queen, you could play something a bit like bishop d5 to try attack the f7 pawn.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be the way to open up the F file after the trade. And also,
Even though I'm still not as confident we can win the endgame.
yeah, we will like bring the game into the end after trading the queen. So yeah, we realize the black queen is a very good queen. It's a very good one. It stay in the center, so maybe offering a queen trade like queen e3, and we can open the F file. So we can maybe attack the f7. Okay, so we have third plan. Very good. Vicky, what do you think? What would be your plan?
To C1.
I mean, rook c1. Mm-hmm. And what could be your next move after rook c1?
To C3.
Mm-hmm. And then rook d3. Mm-hmm. So I mean, at least we want to move the rook out. Okay, cool. Because there's it's interesting that the e file is a semi-open file, which actually it's easier for black to control because we have e pawn. So it's a little bit like it take us like 3 moves to move the rook to e file. But at least that's the plan. That is the plan. We can move the rook out. Cool. Blake, what is your idea if you place white? Are you there, Blake?
Rook D1.
Rook d1. Which rook? f1 or a1?
I think F1.
And what could be the next move after rook d1?
Bishop H3.
Bishop h3. So you want to attack the d7 pawn. So this is a semi-open file. And we want to attack the weakness on this semi-open file. Cool. Thank you, everyone. So we have collected so many thoughts and ideas. That's super impressive. But in this game, you know what, everyone? So white plays c5. What? Does anyone want to like think about any reason behind this move? Why does white play c5? What is the reason? What is the reason of c5? And I have a hint earlier when I showed the position. I said this is a lesson we talk about opening files and attacking weakness. So when you play pawn to c5, the first question is, if queen take the pawn, what you gonna do? So very clearly, you make the c file a semi-open. It used to be a closed file, but you give up this pawn intentionally. So if your opponent take the pawn, you make this c file semi-open. And then if you play rook to c1, you don't have to move the rook to c3 and e3, so you naturally have a c file. And you can attack the c7 pawn. So if the queen moved to b6 to protect the pawn, how can you like keep on attacking this pawn? A question to you all. What you gonna do? What you gonna keep attacking this pawn? How can you keep attacking this pawn? Jaden.
Queen to c2 or queen to c3. I prefer queen to c3 because it also attacks g.
You're right. Queen to c3. That is the best move. So queen to c3, you're attacking 2 pawns. And if you take g7, black cannot castle. So if black wants to castle, black has to move, has just castle. And you can take c7. And you're attacking the rook because the bishop is undeveloped. These 2 rooks cannot be connected. Queen has to take yours, and you take the queen. And look at this position. And if you compare this one with the starting position, if you look at the starting position, so black has a very good queen, and the c5 is open. And I will talk about how can black defend on the d5 if you move rook to d1. But if you compare this position with this one, you can see that white pieces become more active, and your rook from a1 to c7, the rook has moved to a very good position, and you see the d pawn. So black used to have connected pawns, but after trading the c pawns, after trading c4 and the c7, the d pawn become isolated, right? And also the rook has reached 7th rank. This is a very good rank for a rook. You cannot push the b pawn because you will lose a pawn. But if you don't push the b pawn, your bishop and the rook has to stay here because white have two pieces attacking b7. And if you move the pawn, I mean, d5 just lose the pawn. If d6, you basically lose, the pawn will be under attack. Rook to d8 and bishop to d5. You can attack f7 and b7, so you can win the pawn. So c5. So this is a very good example to showcase how can we open up the file by giving up a pawn first. So we're giving up a pawn first to opening up the file. But the next question is, what if black doesn't take our c5? So for example, black just castle. No, not the king of a. Black just castle. Black want to make the c file closed because black has slow piece development. If you are slow in piece development, it's good that you keep position as close as possible. Okay, but after castling, then you move rook to c1. So this c point pawn becomes so useful to control these two squares. And why do we do that? Because if you play d6 and after taking the pawn, regardless you take that with the queen or not, black will have an isolated pawn at d5, and then you can move rook to c7. It's just a similar position as we saw earlier. So d6 will only leave an isolated pawn at a d file, and b6 that's the same. So if you take that with the c pawn, the d pawn will become isolated, and if you take that with the a pawn, the c7 pawn will become a target because the c open file. For example, after f4, how can the black queen protect the c7? It's impossible. d4, c5, that's not the choice. d6, you move queen to d6, you will have so bad pawn structure. So that is how the c5 pawn become useful, and you can move the rook to protect the c5 pawn. And we can talk about some other idea we just discussed. So for example, rook to c1, rook to c2, rook to e3. I mean, it's good that we move the rook to this semi-open file, but it takes so many moves. And when you move rook to c1, I think black can move the pawn to d6 first, and then black can castle. And yeah, when you move rook to c3, black just cancel. If you move rook to e3, that's fine. I just move queen to f6, and the queen is quite good. And we also mentioned rook to d1, and later bishop to h3. It's good that we realize the d7 pawn is at a semi-open file. But again, after d6, the d6 pawn will become so strong. It's supported by the c7, and then black can castle. And it's really hard to break through on the d5. So c5 is a very good move. Opening up the file by giving up the pawn. Cool. Then let's look at another position. I think some of you might have seen this position before because this game is a very good example to showcase how can we develop pieces or how can we set up a second wave of piece development. Because when we talked about opening, we said a lot of times it's good that we develop pieces, but in the middle game, it's still as important as the opening to make your pieces or improve the position of pieces. Like in this one, so black has already developed all the minor pieces. The rook has been developed d8, controlling the d file. but how can we keep developing pieces? And you can see the positions are quite similar between the two, right? The only difference is black has a rook at d8. That is the only difference. The rest of pieces are exactly the same in the position. And it's black to move. So black moved knight to e5 to offer exchange because black wants to attack the king side, and knight e5 open up this diagonal for the bishop. And also, if we can remove the f3 knight, we can attack h2, for example. And also, the f3 knight is a very good like a blocker of this bishop. So if we can remove the bishop, we can make this two bishop so powerful. So black take that, we take the knight, and white play f4 to kick our bishop. A question to you all. So where would you place the bishop? Do you want to trade bishop with the knight, or do you want to move into d6, c7, or b8? Which one do you prefer? Where do you want to place the bishop? First of all, I would like exclude like bishop to c3 because I think our bishop is so powerful than the knight, so I don't really want to trade the bishop with the knight. But the question is, where should we retreat the bishop? Do you want to place it at d6 or c7? Let's narrow down the options. We only have two options, bishop d6 or bishop c7. If you agree with bishop d6, please give me a thumb up. If you would like to move the bishop to c7, please give me a thumb down. What do you say? Bishop to c7, Jaden. You like bishop c7, Jack, also thumb down, bishop c7. Anyone else? Thumb down from Ricky, from Jane. Blake, what do you think? Do you want to move bishop to d6 or bishop c7? Anyone want to contribute any like reason? Why do you want to move bishop to c7?
Bishop to c7.
Blake, any reason?
To keep the rook unblocked.
You mean keep this d5 open for the rook? Why you move bishop to c7? Jaden, do you want to add something? Your hand is up.
I agree.
Yeah. So we have two reasons, and you guys have mentioned the first one. So bishop to c7, you don't block the rook, and you can pivot the bishop to this diagonal. I mean, this one from h2 to b8, this diagonal is already like over because after f4, the bishop cannot attack h2. The f4 pawn is very strong, but after f4, the e3 pawn become a target, right? Because this pawn is a backward pawn. So you can pivot the bishop to b6 to switch your bishop, switch the focus from b8 to h2 to b6 to g1. But if you move bishop to d6, you cannot move the bishop to c5. So bishop to c7 is better. And also I think bishop c7 is better than bishop b8 because bishop b8 you like kind of like block this a8 rook. So if you cannot move the bishop to a7 in time, the rook will stay at the corner. The bishop c7 is good. And e4, rook c8, e5, bishop to b6. You see? So this diagonal is closed, but we move the bishop to b6 instead. And this diagonal, the bishop is so strong. And black still have very strong like bishop pair controlling these two diagonals. And king h1, knight to g4. is that a mistake? And white take the knight. So if white take the knight, black can take the bishop. So black, first of all, is attacking the knight. And also, the rook can move to d2. If you look at the bishop, the rook, and also the rook is attacking b2. So black doesn't want to lose the control of the d file. So black move the bishop to e4 to offer exchange. This is how we can resolve a very dangerous piece. So white just want to offer exchange, but we don't really want to like exchange the bishop because this one is a very powerful piece. Queen to h4, g3. Queen defending h2. So now black play a brilliant move. Rook to c3. Black give up the queen. Why is that? The first of all, rook takes c2, the c3, the c3 knight is defending e4. So if you take my rook, I take your bishop because these two direct control, you have to take that and queen h2. That's a mate. But what if pawn take our queen? So pawn take our queen, what can we do? And black has another brilliant move, which finalizes the game. So let's take the one that's a puzzle. So black has a brilliant move. After the move, white resigned. Can anyone find out what is the best move? So now I think all the black pieces are well positioned. The knight, the bishop, this bishop, the rook, and this one. So when your pieces are fully ready, so usually you will have a very good tactical opportunity. Can anyone find the best move for black? This is not easy, but I can point out where the tension is. So right now, the queen is protecting the e4 bishop, right? Okay, Jaden.
Rook to c2.
Look to c2. You want to like make some deflection, I think.
Or rook to d2.
Rook to d2. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Rook d2 is much better. Rook to c2, I think the queen can still take our rook and protect the bishop. But after rook to d2, how can one protect the bishop? That's impossible. If you take the rook, I can take a bishop, and that's a checkmate. What about queen to g2? What can we do next? We are very close to win. We're very close to winning after going to g2. There's a brilliant move behind it. We have so many brilliant moves throughout this game. So let's take this one as the last puzzle for today. Jaden, you're muted.
Rook h3.
Rook a3. Great. Why is this the best move?
Well, one, the queen can't take it back.
The queen's pinned, right? But what
Yeah.
if the queen take our bishop?
We just take on h2, of course.
Is that checkmate? Queen rook to h2. That is a checkmate because you have a bishop controlling g1. So basically, when all your pieces are ready, it's so much easier for you to like make successful attack. So yeah, rook h3. But the real learning from this one I want to share is how can black improve the position, right? So after trading the bishop, I really feel impressive of this movement of the bishop. The bishop like being attacked, and then it moved b6 again, and the bishop and the rook collaborate to finalize the game. And also, you see all the pieces have been involving into the attacking. So this is so great. This is so efficient. Okay, so I really would like to. Okay, let's keep it for the next time. I think we have already like told so many things for today. All right, that's it for today. And thank you, everyone. And Jaden, do you say you are going to play a tournament this Sunday?
Yeah, I am.
Mhm. What is that? Is that the
Oh, it's the like mega final.
okay? Cool. Do you want to play Scotch game?
Maybe, but I might not know how to play.
Think about it. Jane, your hand is up.
I'm also going to the mega final on Sunday.
Okay, are you guys playing on the same tournament?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm
Cool.
I'm playing for the T side one.
I don't know which one that is. I have to ask my parents.
Hmm. We will figure out. Good
Okay.
luck. Good luck. Cool. That's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Done.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.